I'm Father Terrance, and we all have dependencies. A dependency is a reliance on someone or something for support or for existence. You can be dependent in an unhealthy way on objects, so you can have a chemical addiction to drugs or alcohol, for example, or a sexual addiction to pornography. You can be dependent on behaviors, so an addiction to behaviors that appear to be bad, aren't widely socially accepted, and can be harmful. For example, inappropriate sexual activity, gambling, excessive spending, compulsive eating. It can be an addiction to behaviors that appear to be good, are widely socially acceptable, but may be equally harmful, like workaholism, perfectionism, excessive caregiving. There can be an unhealthy dependency on people as well, too. So you can have a love addiction in which you feel like your identity is in someone else. So typically a weak love addict is emotionally dependent on someone who is strong. You could also have a savior addiction, feeling that your identification is in your ability to meet the needs of someone else. A strong savior needs to be needed by someone who is weak. Think of the example of Popeye always having to rescue olive oil in the cartoons, right? A dependency can become an addiction to an object, behavior, or person that represents an underlying attempt to get emotional needs met. Codependency is defined as being dependent on someone to the point of being controlled or manipulated by them. It's a relationship and an emotional addiction. With codependency, two people are addicted to each other, but they're in denial about their addiction. They're driven by an excessive need to be needed and a fear of being alone or being abandoned. The codependent relationship could be between two spouses. It could be between a parent and one of their children. It could be between an employer and employee. It could be between two friends, a boyfriend and a girlfriend also, maybe a teacher and a student. So there are a number of different codependent dynamics. In codependency, there's a need to be attached to someone or a need for approval. It leads to an excessive sense of responsibility and a dependence on people pleasing. Codependent people may appear to be capable, self-sufficient, but they can be insecure, self-doubting, and in need of approval. They struggle with feeling loved and they look for ways to be needed. In codependency, there's really not a lot of dealing with the problem. Everyone's just trying to accommodate, trying to work around the problem. There's a lot of fear because there's a misplaced dependency and a misplaced trust. Codependents can also have a very hard time confronting people. And someone who's emotionally needy is typically self-focused too. In relationships, they are more takers than givers, and they can use up people emotionally. Children who grew up being emotionally needy and who weren't allowed to learn the skills necessary for forming healthy adult relationships, they can never learn healthy independence. They have difficulty speaking the truth, asking for what they want, setting boundaries. They can become codependent adults who are addicted to unhealthy relationships because they never learned anything different. In codependency, typically, what is the dynamic? Typically, one person in the relationship is perceived to be emotionally weak. The other is perceived as strong, but in reality, they are both weak, and they're both trying to draw strength from one another because both of them have abandonment and enmeshment issues. The weak one is typically looking for security. The strong one is typically looking for a sense of significance. Both codependent people are insecure and they become entangled in a web of emotional bondage. They combine to produce a destructive cycle of manipulation and control, draining joy and happiness out of life. And because this destructive dynamic is often subconscious, both can really actually feel innocent of any wrongdoing. What are the causes of codependency? Usually it's childhood pain. When you have loved, starved children who have felt rejected, As adults, they can become love addicts, looking for a savior to rescue them and make them feel whole, or looking to actually become a savior or a rescuer in order to have a sense of significance. All children pass through 5 developmental stages on their way to maturity and adulthood. God designed the family to provide the necessary structure for the healthy completion of each of those stages. If as children we fail to progress successfully from one stage to another, our development will be stunted at that stage and will grow up being emotionally immature adults. We develop adult bodies, but we're underdeveloped emotionally. The result is that we are inclined to be drawn into codependent, needy relationships. Typically no one sets out to be emotionally addicted to someone, to constantly crave love from someone. These cravings were created in childhood because there was no water in the well, as they say. Their love buckets is what they call them. Love buckets were empty, and they still are empty. In general, codependents are love-starved children. When unloved children receive a rare moment of attention or affection from their unloving parents, it can result in a feeling of exhilaration, but also confusion, too. They feel confused as to why they can't be consistently loved, and they become fixated on how to get that feeling of love again. Rejected children live for any moment of acceptance. Any hint of love becomes an emotional high that temporarily relieves their pain. These children may become adult love addicts because they, again, didn't receive enough positive affirmation as children. They grew up not feeling loved, secure, significant. Maybe they experienced a traumatic separation or a lack of bonding. They felt and continue to feel insecure. They feel intense sadness and profound loss at being abandoned. Maybe they experienced repeated rejection from parents, or they felt and continue to feel extreme fear, helplessness, emptiness. And no matter how much love they receive, it's not enough because they themselves are not whole. As adults, they're still emotionally needy children who believe that being loved by someone, by anyone, is the solution to their emptiness. They believe that they need to enter relationships thinking that they can't take care of themselves. They assign too much value and power to the other person in a relationship. They're often tremendously unrealistic in their expectations of the other person, and they can try to stick like glue to that person in order to feel connected. And they live in fear that those who truly love them will ultimately actually leave them. What's the cure, or what's the solution to codependency? Well, in a nutshell, the cure is developing an ever-deepening relationship with God, learning to see yourself as He sees you, learning to interiorize His love, learning to draw strength from Him, not from codependent relationships, and also learning how to break free from your codependent patterns of relating to people. So learning to grow emotionally and also to grow in spiritual maturity as well. It's important to pray for emotional healing, perhaps even with an intercessory prayer group setting, and ask the Lord to send into your life people who can model for you what healthy relationships look like, what they're supposed to be like. These are just a few thoughts on the nature and the causes of codependency. Please read more about this issue if it affects you, and perhaps even speak with a good counselor if needed. If you have any of your own thoughts or observations or suggestions, I'd love to hear them in the comments section below. I'm Father Terrance. Ave Maria. Thank you so much for listening. Please keep me in your prayers, and I will keep you in mine as well. God bless you and take care.